Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast.
We see the syphilitic shrinking obelisk, the white man's wilting dick. We see through dangling jowls of seedy game show trolls the smiling lie of the televised hive. The witches are watching with their thousand eyes. Witches are watching with their thousand eyes. We smell rotten teeth that speak beyond belief. A stick inside their skull would...
Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 71. This episode is sponsored by the fine folks at Lee's Comics. Attention comic book fans, Lee's Comics in Mountain View, California has closed. But here's the good news. Lee's Comics eBay store is still going strong with over 10,000 vintage comics, the majority of which are now on sale, for half off. Choose from Lee's huge stock of golden, silver, bronze, and modern age comics, and specializing in Silver Age Marvel titles. You can count on friendly service, accurate grading, and quick, secure shipping backed by a money-back guarantee. To check out Lee's eBay store, go to eBay. Click Advanced Search to the left of the search bar, scroll down to Sellers, and enter Lee's Comics Inc., period. That's LEESCOMICS INC, period. Don't forget the period. Lee's Comics is shipping daily with no delays. New items daily. Mention the Fun Ideas Podcast and get a free bonus gift. Here are some recent comments about this podcast, and I really appreciate the kind words. Tom on YouTube says, "Amazing content. You deserve more subscribers." I agree. I usually push subscribing to YouTube or Podomatic when I upload or at the end of this show. But on YouTube, I currently have a little over 100 subscribers, and YouTube starts paying creators once they reach the 1,000 subscriber mark. So, do me a favor, tell your friends about the Fun Ideas Podcast, and get them to subscribe too. It's just a click of a button on my YouTube page. Also, I'd appreciate it if you became a Patreon of me. It does cost some money, mainly for storage space, to do this show, so if I could get at least $100 a month from outside sources, that will help defray some of the costs in doing it. Of course, you can advertise like Lee's Comics does. Rates are low, and they run for the entire season. Contact me at funideas.mark@gmail.com if interested. As far as Fun Ideas Productions is concerned, I'm doing well during the pandemic, and I'm working on the Mad book and on the new Disney book, and 4 articles for Back Issue magazine. Headquartered, the book about the monkey solo years that I wrote with Michael A. Ventrella is my latest book. And look for the Warren Kremer book and the TTV scrapbook soon. Of course, I'm continuing this podcast during the summer for now, so I will be doing that as well. Our guest today has worked for Archie Comics since the late 1980s. He's also been producing his own comic book series through Kickstarter called Die Kitty Die since 2016. Here he is, Dan Parent. Okay, on the phone today I have Dan Parent. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
And just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your career, and I guess to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in comic books and drawing and writing.
Well, I've always been a comic book fan since I was, as long as I can remember. Starting out, of course, with Harvey Comics. As most people know, I love Harvey Comics. And Archie. Those were my 2 first comics, and then I got into superhero comics as I got older. But I was always into comic books in one form or another, and I always was drawing. So when I was in high school, I kept it up. I was in all the art clubs, and then I decided it was what I wanted to do for a career. So I went to the Joe Kubert School of Cartoon Art, which a lot of professionals in our industry have attended.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fortunate when I went there because Archie Comics would come there every year and look for talent. And luckily, when they came back in my second year of school, or beginning of third year, I should say, it's a 3-year school, they liked some of my samples. And they hired me while I was still in school. So I was doing started doing simple one-page gags and things like that. And and then when I graduated, they had an opening to work up in the office. So I then started working in the Archie offices.
Cool. Now,
and I've been there ever since.
Now, when you were drawing in school in your portfolio, was it in the Archie style, or is it just they just liked your work?
Some of it was in the Archie style. I mean, when I knew they were coming, of course, I did some Archie samples. As a few other people did too. But my stuff was always sort of cartoony, semi-cartoony.
Yeah.
I always had that sort of style, so it did fit in well with the Archie look. Mm-hmm. That was, and so it was just, I guess I just was a fit for Archie, which is good, as I don't know what else I would have done, so it worked out pretty well.
And now, were you mentored by Dan DiCarlo, or how did that work? Mm-hmm. I think in the early years you were, yeah. Yeah,
it was great, because when I started there, they would have, whenever it was I or one of the other newer artists started there, they would always sort of try and get us to, when Dan DiCarlo would come into the office 1 or 2 days a week to bring work in, and they would always try and when he came in to have us show him our work, and he would sort of go over it a little bit, which was very helpful. And then back in the early 90s, when I was at Archie for a few years, they were Dan was trying to slow down a little bit. So what he would do is he would lay out pages, and I would finish them. So he'd bring in these really pretty rough layouts, and I would tighten them up, and we did that for a couple of years. So you'll see a lot of some of the old issues of Betty and Veronica Digest or Betty and Veronica Spectacular. You'll see that it says art by Dan DiCarlo and Dan Parent. I would finish those. Okay. And I really learned a lot of that. I think my art improved a lot at that point. Mm-hmm. Because I was drawing right over Dan DiCarlo, so it was impossible not to pick that up and get better.
Were you doing inking too, or just tightening the pencils?
Just tightening the pencils. Mm. Yeah, I was doing a little inking here and there and other stuff, but on Dan's stuff I was just doing the pencils. Mm-hmm.
And then about what time did you start getting stories on your own, or was that all along you just had some with Dan or not?
I started doing, I think when I was there a few months, maybe 6 months, I got my first 5-page story. It was almost the Archie stories at that time, ran 5 and 6 pages. Mm-hmm. So I started getting those kinds of stories. Then I started doing a lot of stuff for the digest too, because the digests had so many at the time, needed so much material. And at that time, they put several new stories in each digest, so there was a lot of material that needed to be filled. So I do a lot of stories for the digest and specials. I didn't have a regular series until I did the Veronica book in 1989. That was my first full book.
Okay.
But yeah, they kept me busy. And then when I also was working up in the office, I was also there. I was there. We were really working in the office during the day and doing freelance at home at night. So I was really working around the clock. But when I was working in the office, I was doing licensing.
Okay.
So we worked on a lot of, and I learned a lot of that how to do package design and that kind of stuff too. So it was a good learning experience.
Now, were you allowed to do your freelance work at work, or no? They said you have to do that after.
No,
okay.
No. I wish. Yeah. Sometimes during lunchtime I would. But basically, you're getting paid a freelance rate for that. I was getting a salary to work on staff.
I see.
So they try and keep that separately. So that lasted for about 10 years. I think in 1996 or 97, they told me to go freelance because they had a lot of material. I was really nervous about it because I liked, getting the steady paycheck.
Right.
I was always worried about being freelance, but of course it worked out great. It's just kind of nervous when you're used to getting a salary.
Right. Well, I never knew you worked full time. So when you were doing that, what does licensing entail?
Well, it depends. Like, sometimes they would want designs for card games or rack toys. I did an Archie calendar that I think I worked on that for like a year. It's like a long, long time. With Rex Lindsay, we worked on a calendar together. And then we did Bill Gollier and I did a set of Archie trading cards. There was probably, I think there was 100 different cards. So that was another project that was pretty much like a year in the making.
Wow.
And then I would also work on regular Archie stuff too. Like I'd work on production for the Archie books too. But I would kind of work on licensing as much as they needed me, which was quite a bit.
Did you come up
very busy?
Did you come up with ideas yourself, or did you just say we're doing a card set now, or we're doing a calendar now, or what?
Oh, definitely. Because we had to do the ideas too. Because we had to for the trading cards. It was all mostly recycled art, so we had to basically go through and find covers and panels that we liked. So we had to go through all the archives and find the original art, make sure we had film for it. Because back then everything was on film; it wasn't on a digital file. So we had to go do that. And then same thing with the calendar. The calendar was mostly new art. So Rex Lindsay and I did a lot of new art on that. But this is back at the days when we had to set it all up ourselves. So we were doing all the typesetting ourselves, and just pre-Photoshop.
I'm pretty sure I have that calendar, but I did find a calendar for 2020 this year. Did you work on that one?
I didn't, but they used a lot of my artwork on it.
Oh, okay, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of my style guide are yeah. But the one we did, I think it was a 1990 calendar. The one I did with Rex, because it actually started out as an '89 calendar, and I think it went. We went so long on it, we had to make it in 1990.
Man, I'm pretty sure I have that one because I was like, ooh, Archie calendar, because it didn't come out very often. I mean, I did that this last year. I go, ooh, Archie calendar, and I was like, wow, it's drawn in the standard style. I didn't know if it was new artwork or, like you said, just already stock art. But it's like, it's kind of cool because everything. And, I always wanted to ask you about this. Everything changed over to, the realistic-looking Archies. And I was wondering at that point, were you kind of fearing for your job at that point since you tended to draw in the DeCarlo-type style?
I wasn't really fearing for it. I mean, I was wondering how far it would go because Riverdale... Well, first there was the new style, which was very popular. Right. Which also, I think, helped bring in Riverdale. And then, but there always was a classic. There always was fans of the classic because there's always been some people that just didn't like the new style. Right. And some people did like it. But the digests are still always the best selling books we put out. Yeah. So, there's definitely that clamoring for the classic style. So I wouldn't. I don't know if I was worried. I guess I just figured whatever happens, at this point. I've been doing it for a long time, so I can't complain if it's, but I just kept the faith that I knew from doing conventions and stuff that there was a lot of people who did not want to let go of the classic stuff. Right.
And I know you in more recent times there's miniseries like Your Pal Archie and things like that. So I guess the original or that style made a comeback. I can't say that's the original style either because DeCarlo's style is different from, say, Montana's or somebody else's, so... Right,
yeah. And my style is a little different from other people's, but you can still tell the classic style, pretty easily over the new style.
Right. Now, during the course of events, there are various characters introduced, and I believe you created Kevin Keller, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how did that come about? Did they say, we need a new character, make him gay, or was it that simple, or was it a little more involved than that?
Yeah. It was what happened at the time was, this is around 2009, and the two old bosses, Michael Silverclay and Richard Goldwater, passed away. So the company went into the new hands. including John Goldwater, who was the brother of Richard Goldwater. And, of course, he was, like, 25 years younger and had a different outlook. And he was like, why is Riverdale so, like, white and 50s-ish? And we're like, well, you know, it is, that's true. And so he just said, you know, we just need more diversity. We just need to make Riverdale more 20th century. So that was where we were going first. So we brought in a lot of new characters to Riverdale. We, like, flooded the school with a ton of new characters just to see which ones would kind of stick. And that went well. People liked it. And then we were like, can we do a gay character? Because at this time it was 2010, and, like, you know, Will and Grace was popular. TV, there was a lot of gay characters on TV.
Right.
It didn't seem like such a taboo. And then John was like, you know, I can't really think of a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
So let's just do it. and we did, and, you know, there was some backlash, a little bit of backlash, but the Archie fans liked Kevin right away. Like, the diehard Archie fans really liked Kevin. So, so that, you know, that went well, and we just figured, like, you know, if we want to do something, we feel good about it, we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas the old guard sort of used to worry a little too much. Like, we'd do, like, a story, and, you know, like, with an interracial theme or something, a dating, which is not a big deal at all, but there was always this, like, a little bit of worrying about, well, you know, people in the Midwest might not like it. And I'm like, why are we worried about people in the Midwest? Like, why? I mean, I don't think they would really care, to be honest, but they didn't want to ruffle any feathers.
Well, even other stories that have been done over the years are kind of like, they never would have done them in the old days, like Afterlife with Archie, or even Archie getting married, or Archie dying, or whatever, you know, all those have done.
That's the thing. We've taken chances in the last 10 years, and it pays off, because people want to see different stories. For many, many years, as much as I enjoyed working on a lot of the Archie stuff, there was a lot of years we played it very safe. Yeah. And there were so many stories we wanted to do that weren't allowed to do. But they did get a taste of that. It was when Richard and Michael were still there. It was when we did do the Archie married storyline. Like, that was one of the few storylines they approved that was kind of, like, pushing the boundaries. And that was such a huge hit. So they did want to. I think they were in the mindset of doing some changes. Of course, then around the time they passed away. So I think they could see that we needed to sort of, you know, branch out.
Now, besides Kevin, were you the creator of any other characters in recent times that ever of note?
Well, I've created some other characters that, you know, maybe weren't as popular as Kevin, but, like, Ginger Lopez is the character I created. Created Jughead's sister, Jelly Bean. Oh, yeah. Back in the 90s. So there's been, like, those, like incidental characters. Mrs. Lodge, I didn't create Mrs. Lodge, obviously, but I named her, gave her her name, and sort of gave her, like, gave her more of a spotlight when the Veronica series started. Because before that, you rarely saw Mrs. Lodge. Every once in a while, she was just very, you know, it was always Mr. Lodge. Right. So now she kind of appeared more after that. So, yeah, there's been some incidental characters. Like Bridget was another character. I don't think she's been on the Riverdale yet, but she was their character who was, like, a singer. I created her back in the 90s. So, but yeah, I've had some fun creating characters.
And did you help create any of those storylines that we were talking about, like Archie got married, or was that independent of you?
I didn't work on the first one. I just worked on the most recent one, the 10th anniversary storyline. Okay. I worked on that. I worked on the Archie loves Valerie storyline, where he has, like, a little fling with Valerie from Josie and the Pussycats. Right. So that one I came up with that idea and wrote that, drew it too. So that was fun. That was, like, one of my favorites, favorite storylines I ever did.
So, like, nowadays, because the diversity and the different ability to experiment and things like that, are they open to any idea, or are they still hesitant of certain things, barring, like, being sexually explicit or something like that? I'm not talking about that, but, you know, is anything that's still kind of a no-no, like, don't go there, that you've been told?
Not really. I mean, he's always, like, John Goldwater's always, like, bringing us ideas. I want to see what you have in mind. So, no, they're always very open to ideas. I mean, some get rejected, of course. Yeah. But there's nothing really that's not that they're not willing to listen to.
Well, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to do a cover. Like, I can tell you one thing that got rejected, but I still want to do it. Was I had a cover where Betty Betty and Veronica are on the cover, and they're like in maternity blouses, and they're like pregnant, and Archie has this like puzzled look on his face, like uh-oh. but then you read the storyline, and the storyline is one of those stories like where they pretend to be pregnant in school,
right?
Like they pretend to have like a baby. So that was like the story. And I just wanted to do like a shock value cover,
right?
But that they rejected. They said that was too much to think that Archie would be like, impregnating Betty and Veronica. So that didn't happen.
Oh, that's too bad. Maybe someday. Yeah.
Maybe someday.
But I know, they've done ones in the past where the cover set acts like Archie's in the military, and of course he's younger than military age and things like that. And then of course it turned out it was just a test or recruiting or something like that. It wasn't the real thing.
Right.
I can't remember the exact story, but it was like an early.
Yeah, there was like that Archie got drafted story. Back in the 60s. Yeah.
What's kind of on the horizon for Archie nowadays? I mean, it seems like the TV show Riverdale and now Katie Keene, they're pretty popular and stuff like that. Is there like movies or cartoons or anything else on the horizon?
I know they've got like more Sabrina coming on Netflix. I know Riverdale was renewed for another season. I know they've got some animation deals in the works. I'm not sure all the details of it, but I know they've got some of those things in the works. They've got a lot of like different media things going on. And,
cool.
As far as the comics go, we're still doing some actually working on a book right now that I can't say it yet. They're going to announce it I think this week. So it's another fun crossover.
That's cool.
And I just finished Archie Meets the B-52s, which was a lot of fun.
Right.
They just some of these things just go very randomly.
Yeah.
And those are usually like the most fun.
Yeah, I was going to mention like the crossovers and stuff like that, so I'll just ask about them. I mean, do you bring in the ideas for those, or is it the various groups like Kiss or the Ramones or even the Monkees? Do they pursue Archie and say, "Hey, can you do something about us?" Or a little of both?
It works out both ways. Like sometimes it works out both ways. Like B-52s was my idea.
Okay,
because
cool.
I just mentioned it to Fred Schneider on Facebook, and he thought it was a cool idea, so it all kind of came loose from that. Mm-hmm. And I think because we had done the Ramones and other groups that they were more into it.
Right.
But like Kiss came about. Like I think my boss, John Goldwater, knows Gene Simmons.
Oh, okay.
That was sort of just like a handshake friendly deal. And then we did just some of our Predator just was like one of those things at a meeting. We were like, what would be a crazy idea? Archie meets Predator. And then they just mentioned it to Dark Horse, who had the license, and they said yes, and that was a deal. So some of these things are very random. Sharknado was came through me because I met the producers of Sharknado at Comic-Con. Uh-huh. And I did a commission for them with Archie battling a Sharknado scene. And that stemmed. People liked it on social media, and it just happened. So we did a Archie meets Sharknado one shot, and that was it sold really well.
Cool. How about the Star Trek one?
Well, Star Trek we didn't. We only did a cover for that.
Oh, really? I thought there was a series or a one shot. Oh, okay, forgive me.
Yeah, we did a cover for IDW was doing the Star Trek book. Okay. And they were doing Archie themed covers that month. So
okay, that's what
Star
I saw.
Trek Archie
Okay.
one, so that was cool.
Okay. And then you did one of the TV show Glee.
Glee, yeah. Glee was really big at that time.
Did you pursue that one, or did they come to you?
That they came to us. Well, that was when Roberto Sacasa was working for us. Roberto Sacasa, who does he works on Riverdale now. He's in charge of Riverdale. That was one of the first projects he did when it came to Archie, because he was working on Glee. Mm-hmm. So he got us the deal for that, and that was probably that was a really tough book because there were so many characters, and they had to approve their likenesses, and it was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. A lot of work.
How about some earlier ones? Well, this one you were there when Archie meets not Predator, the Terminator. That was one of the earlier ones. So how did that one come about?
We didn't know. We never did Terminator. We did Archie meets the Punisher.
Punisher. That's what I was thinking. I apologize. Yeah, Punisher is what I was thinking. Yeah.
Archie meets that was back when I was back in my days back in the Archie art department. Yeah, Stan Goldberg worked on that. John Buscema, and then. Yeah, that was a fun project.
Mm-hmm. And again, did you pursue Marvel, or did Marvel come to you, or how did that one work?
You know, I don't remember exactly. I think it was one of those meetings where Victor Gorelick at the time was meeting with someone at Marvel, and it just kind of came up.
Okay.
And then 2 years ago, I worked on Archie Meets Batman '66, which was probably my favorite. That was my favorite project, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun, and we know we're friends with DC, so that was one of those things that.
Right.
Actually, I pitched that with Steve Orlando, and I pitched that together, and then Steve Orlando couldn't write it because he was committed to other stuff. Once it finally came through, so then Jeff Parker ended up writing it, but. Yeah, we had pitched that one. I think it took a few years to get that one going. And then there's the crazy team up now of Red Sonja and Vampirella meeting Betty.
Oh yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but yes,
that one's crazy. That one's crazy. That's fun. I did all the covers for the issues, and then I drew one issue of that. So that's a lot of fun. So it's.
Let's see. Another one was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Did you work on that one, or is that?
I didn't. I remember that one. That was another one shot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the one I was going to think of, though, was way back. I was just curious if you knew anything about it, because it's always kind of a quirky comic. The Archie Soupy Sales crossover.
Oh, that's right.
Do you know anything about the history on that?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I don't. No, I remember. I know I've seen it. I've seen it before, and I think I have a copy of it actually. Yeah. Yeah, that was another. That was Soupy Sales was a big deal at the time.
Yeah. I was just wondering if that was another case where they came to you or you came to them or whatever. But before all our times, I know.
That was before my time. Yes.
And you mentioned Victor Gorelick, and of course we've lost him recently. I was just wondering if you had some, and I met him a few times, and he was a very nice man to me. I was just wondering if you had any funny stories or any memories that you'd like to share with us.
Well, the thing I liked about Victor was we just would sit there and talk for hours in his office about random stuff. We were just TV shows, movies, and he was just really fun to talk to. Mm-hmm. As we got older, the subject matter would change more from TV shows to our prostate exams and things that happen as you age. But we always had plenty to talk about. Mm-hmm. Victor was very funny. He had a very dry sense of humor, very sarcastic sense of humor, which I always enjoyed. Mm-hmm. But no, I really will miss him. I miss him because he was a real mentor to me, and sort of a father figure. And so he was. He's the guy who plucked me out of Gilbert School. He's the one that came and looked at my portfolio and gave me my first work. So I really owed a lot to him, and it was really. He was Archie. He was he defined that company.
Well, did he work there longer than anybody else? It seems like
yes.
He did. Yeah.
62 years.
Wow.
which is insane. And he was 16 when he started.
Yeah.
And he was 62 years. I mean, that's who works anywhere 62 years. I mean, 30, 40 years is a good run, but 62, that's
right.
That's beyond belief.
Right. Do you know how he got hired or anything like that? I don't really know the information.
I know he was working in the mailroom when he started, and then he worked in the art department. And then he kind of worked his way up to art director. And he did leave for a short period of time to go into the military, and then he came back. And but yeah, he worked his way up to managing editor, assistant editor, became the editor, and then he was vice president, then editor in chief. So he just had a real long, steady rise at Archie. And
was he a fan prior to working there? Is that what it was? And he just said, "Hey, I want to work here," or is he just wanting to be in comic books in general?
I'm not really. I don't know if he was a fan of Archie beforehand. I'm not really sure about what his history before that was.
Yeah.
Because that would have been back in the 50s when he stared.
Yeah.
So Archie was still around. Archie had still been around for 16, 17 years. So right. I'm sure he must have known about Archie.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just became the Archie guy. Everyone who thought of Archie Comics always thought of Victor.
Right. And, you've worked with other people. I mean, we mentioned Dan DiCarlo. I mean, do you have any fond memories of him, of course?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, he was such a sweet guy. He was so easy to work with, and he had no ego whatsoever. Like, people would gush over his work, and he just would be like, "Oh, I can't, really? Like, you really feel that way?" Like, he just didn't have an ego at all, which I found astounding because I always was drooled over his artwork. It was always so nice, and again, he showed me a lot of how to improve my work, and he was just very generous and very nice. And Stan Goldberg too. I worked with Stan Goldberg, and he was also a real sweet guy, and really easy to talk to. And yeah, they really. And then when I also used to work with Dexter Taylor, who also used to draw Little Archie. Yeah, and he used to work in the office. Sometimes. Again, just a very, very sweet, humble guy. So my experience, there wasn't a lot of diva or egos at Archie. Everybody was pretty down to earth.
How about Sam Schwartz, or is he before your time?
Sam Schwartz, I did meet him a few times. He was funny as hell. He was really funny. And I did remember one story where this is like early '90s, and this is when they were doing those Fred Greenberg conventions in the city, and it was like at the Hotel Pennsylvania, I think. And there was a convention, and I had to take him somewhere. I forgot why we were going there, and I was trying to get him back down to the convention. The floor, and somehow I got us lost on the elevator, and then we ended up in the kitchen on one of the floors. And I was we were taking him through hell, and I was just tragically lost. And but he was so funny about it. He was I was really embarrassed as I was trying to not make a fool out of myself. And he just was very very nice, and he always made jokes about it too. Like, I don't, he always told Victor, do not ever let him take me anywhere again. But he was just fun, and he was the way when you look at his work, it's just like the way he is. Yeah, it was like a little offbeat and sarcastic and not quite the norm. It wasn't like the regular Archie stuff. Right.
I mean, at first I didn't think I liked his stuff. I liked the Jughead title and the character, but, there was something odd about his stuff, and then it grew on me, and I said, wow, I like this guy. But at first I was like, huh? This is more like in the 70s, in the, early 80s, and then, and I didn't even know his name at first. I said, they just got this weird artist, and I didn't know he went back further, back to the 60s and 50s. I thought he was a current artist, and it was more that I think he kind of changed his style from pen to ink, brush to pen or something like that. So,
his early stuff looked a lot more like Montana and the other artists. Yeah. And then he definitely branched in the '60s. He basically, when he really started taking over Jughead, he just sort of branched into that eccentric style of his that was perfect for Jughead.
Now, in your years there, he might be before your time. Did you ever meet Harry Lucy or no?
I never got a chance to meet Harry Lucy because I think he passed away in the early '80s. Yes. So that was before my time. Yeah.
Oh, when did you start again? I thought you started.
I started in '87.
Oh, okay, '87. Okay, I thought you started earlier than that. Okay, I knew it was in the '80s. Yeah, and I didn't know. '87. From the year here. But who's counting anyway? Let's see. Well, here's a person I think he's still with us. Bob Bowling. Did you ever have any interactions with him?
Yeah. Bob Bowling's still around. I haven't seen him in a while, but I saw him a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. I was at a convention in Miami. And Michael Uslan interviewed him and me on a panel. Oh, cool. And that was fun. And Bob, again, he's still sharp as a tack, funny. And he was, last time he sent a little Archie story in was a couple years ago, I think. And it was still good. Like, he still, he hadn't lost a thing. His drawing was still right on the money. Cool. And I think he's now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's like the oldest survivor now from the old days of Archie. I think so. I think I want to say, I hope I don't make him older than he is, but I think he's around 95.
Yeah, I was going to say he's probably in his 90s by now, but
Yeah,
I don't know his
and he
exact
was
age.
doing work up until a couple years ago, so he's pretty impressive guy.
Right. How about, well, he's a writer. George Gladder, you worked with him, obviously.
I worked on a lot of his stories, and I remember I used to see him every year at Comic-Con. For a while, Archie always had a dinner at Comic-Con, and we'd always go, and George was always there. I think George passed away. I want to say 2013. I think he passed away around that time. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But I remember always seeing George and always getting a picture with him, and he just was really just another really sweet guy.
Is there anybody else? Oh, like Bill Wagen. Did you ever meet him, or is that before your time?
Bill Wagen, he was before my time.
Or John Lucas, I think he took over.
John Lucas I've met.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. Yeah, I just met him at I think in California, one of the California cons. I met him years ago, and again, very nice guy.
And then, of course, you mentioned, some of the more recent artists and stuff like that, and it seems like everybody gets along pretty well now, as always, I
work with Bill Collier a lot because we went to Kubert School together. We've been good friends for many years, and he went off and did his own thing for a while, worked for different companies, but he's writing a lot of the digest stories that I'm working on now.
Okay.
So he was another guy who came out of Kubert School and worked for Archie.
And then Craig Boldman, I think he's...
Craig Boldman, worked with him a lot. He's great. I see him at certain conventions. And he's another really funny guy. He had a really good run on Jughead with Rex Lindsay. They had a really nice run.
How do they choose who draws or writes a particular story? I mean, obviously, if you come up with something, you're probably going to write it or draw it. But I mean, do they assign anything to you or anything like that? Or
I usually get the girl stuff as I tend to draw the girls better. So I usually get Betty and Veronica stuff. I've always gotten mostly that. But there's no rhyme or reason. For who gets what. Sometimes it's just it depends on who's available. They might a title might come up and they just get the guy who's the most available all the time.
Right.
But sometimes they try and they'll know certain people are better at certain stuff. Like some guys are a little better at drawing adventure, so they might use them for adventure. Some guys might draw girls in fashion a little better, they might use them. But so there's a variety of reasons. But
right. But it looks like, they just give everybody a little bit of everything more than what they did in the past, where, Archie was Harry Lucy's domain, and Betty and Veronica was Dan DiCarlo's domain, and Sam Schwartz had Jughead and everything like that. So pretty much everybody does everything. Okay.
They definitely shake it up a lot more. Whereas nowadays, the books are done differently now. Back then, Sam Schwartz would have drawn 10 years of Jughead straight without a break. Things are more done in 5 and 6 issue story arcs now, because now the marketplace is different. They do books to collect on trades and that kind of thing.
Now, when you do a story that's kind of generic, let's say a 5-page story that's not really fitting into anything or a crossover or anything like that, do you know if it's going to end up in a standard comic book size or a digest, or do you know that going into it where it's going to end up?
I pretty much know where it's going to end up. Usually, most of the 5 and 6 page stories now go right to digest.
Right. I've kind of figured.
But they get the digest stories. They the Betty and Veronica digest stories. I do usually follow a certain theme as they end up in the Betty and Veronica Friends Forever book. So we try and do 4 stories that have a similar theme.
Right. And then. What was I going to ask? I always kind of ask, people who do artwork and things like that, what type of tools that you use, pencils, pens, inks, whatever.
Nothing fancy. I use just one of those cheapo Bic click pencils. The click pencils that you see at your drugstore. I use those.
Cool.
And then for inking, I use these Faber-Castell pens. There's Pitt pens. They're art supply stores. They're India ink, but they're in a marker form, so they're easier to maneuver. So I don't have to use the brush and pen of old days. It's sort of in a pen form. So I use those. And then, of course, everything is basically I draw it on paper, but I scan it into the computer now and do clean up and render in Photoshop because that's just the reality of it. But a lot of people work only in Photoshop or digitally. But if I'm old school, so I draw it on paper because I also like to be able to sell the artwork at conventions and things like that too.
Yeah. Is there a push by Archie or anybody to go digital, or do they just leave you to your own devices?
Yeah, they're fine with whatever works for us.
Okay.
They just, we just deliver the final product to them.
Okay.
They don't care how it's created as long as the final product looks good.
Cool. Now, do you generally do your own inking, or is it sometimes turned over?
I do my own inking on my covers.
Okay.
Usually the interiors are inked by someone else because I usually have enough time to ink the interiors. But covers I do, because I usually just use the covers complete. I'll usually ink and color the covers, and then all I have to do is just send them a digital file.
Cool.
Which is easier for them, and then they don't have to. It's all done, and they just have to plop a logo on it.
Right. And I'll start asking you some questions about some other things that you've done. You worked on Felix the Cat for a number of years. What was that experience like?
That was cool. It was cool. I worked actually when I finished at Archie in the late '90s. I just started going in a day or two a week to Felix the Cat because it's only an hour from my house. I live in Pennsylvania, and in New Jersey, the Felix Studios are there.
Okay.
And Felix was a family-owned business up until a few years ago, like Archie, who was owned by just a family, the Oriola family. So I used to go there, and I worked on licensing again. Like T-shirts and designs for toys and stuff. I worked on some other comics because they were putting out comics for a few years. And I worked on those. But it was cool. It was like a nice. It was like a cool side gig from Archie and something a little different. Mm-hmm. And I love classic. I love Felix the Cat growing up. So it was really cool, really fun.
No, there's no conflict of interest, like Archie was like, hey, quit working on that Felix stuff or something.
No, the characters were different enough where there wasn't a conflict. I was working on in the early 90s, I did do a book for Felix called 13 something, and it was like a teen book. Yeah. And Archie wasn't too happy about that.
Oh.
That they thought was a little close. They said, yeah, you can't do that because you're working on similar subject matter.
Right.
So try not to work on that. So I just worked on the Felix stuff then.
Yeah. Which this is before your time too, but you're aware of it. It's like there's a time where like Marvel and DC and everybody had their own titles that seemed to emulate the Archie style, and some of the same artists crossed over. Do you know any stories from back then that you might have heard? If there was any conflict of interest, if somebody drew for Millie the Model or Scooter or something like that.
Well, Stan Goldberg drew Millie the Model for many years, and that was before he came to Archie.
Oh,
and then I think there was a little bit of a crossover. I think he was doing Millie and Archie at the same time for a little while.
Yeah,
but he was doing Millie first, so it wasn't like Archie could really say anything. Mm-hmm. And then Henry Scarpelli did Binky,
right?
And then he did a lot of Archie stuff. And then there was the only controversial story I know is that Sam Schwartz left Archie to start Tower Comics.
Right. Okay.
Which was Tippy Teen.
Yeah.
And I guess that was a little there was a little bit of conflict there because he was fired.
Oh.
For Archie, and so of course he wasn't doing Jughead anymore. So he kind of became. I think he was like editor-in-chief of Tower Comics too. And Tippy, I think those comics. I think they did okay for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But then they folded after a few years, and then Archie took him back.
Yeah.
I think there was a few stipulations that he not do that again.
Okay, so there was a bit of hand slapping around there, as it were. I was just kind of curious about that because it seemed like there was a while there where every publisher had some sort of Archie type knockoff for a while, and then even Harvey had Bunny, which didn't really look like Archie, but and Charlton had a couple that I think John D'Agostino drew or wrote or something like that. Yeah, so
it was like just showed that Archie was so popular. Well, Archie was the number one selling company for a few years. Even outselling Marvel and DC at some point. I think the number one comic in 1969 was Archie, the Archie title. So it's only natural that all the other companies were copying them, and then sometimes they had characters like Millie and Binky, who kind of they had like an Archie makeover. Like they weren't originally looking like that.
Right.
They were more realistic looking, and then suddenly they became very Archie-esque.
Yeah. But I guess you can't copyright a design per se, so I guess they're kind of stuck with that. Yeah.
Right, you can't really copyright design. I think there were some maybe a couple. I think there was a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Here and there. I think with I want to say Binky. I think they got mad because they were also using the same logo looking letters, like those Archie style letters, and using the same colors. Archie always used to use very bold, they're blue and red letters. Blue background, red letters. Sometimes they use yellow, but they had these very distinct Archie themes for colors, and I think DC was using those, and I think there was some conflict there. They tried to sue, or they just warned them. I don't know. There was a conflict there,
right?
But I know that they didn't want Binky and Debbie to use the lettering font. That was they thought. So I think they changed it from after that.
Yeah, I know. It was this is way back, but there's a title called Linda that had kind of the bubble letters that Archie has,
Oh yeah.
And, of course, Archie put out their own, and I was just going to ask about this now that we're back on Archie, is Archie had their own, knockoffs like Ginger and Wilbur and things like that, although Wilbur kind of predates Archie slightly, but...
And they had that Wilkin boy.
I was just curious on all those, are you at liberty to ever bring those back or anything like that, or is it just kind of those are done? Okay.
They brought that Wilkin boy back a few times. Not in his own book, but they've used it in stories.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I'm not sure if they've done Wilbur. Well, Wilbur was that Wilkin boy.
Yeah. That's
Wilbur
right.
Wilbur morphed into that Wilkin boy.
Right.
But yeah, they always, they're at liberty to bring any of those characters back.
Because, the one I'd like to see come back, which I think I heard rumors that they're bringing back Super Duck.
They are.
Okay.
I just did a cover for it.
Okay. Is it going to be news stories or reprints or both?
Yeah,
or?
News stories.
Okay.
News stories, yep. It's a five-issue miniseries, and it's, brand new. And I think the first issue comes out, I want to say May. I could be wrong, but it comes out soon.
Yeah. And then the one I get these little paperback reprints, because they did one recently of Cosmo the Merry Martian. Is there a chance to bring back Tales Calculated to Drive You Bats in a compilation or anything like that? Or do you have any say-so on stuff like that?
I don't really. That would be cool, though.
Yeah.
There's some cool stories there. But, they did a compilation of, what was that title? Madhouse. They did a Madhouse. Well, Craig Yo did that a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, they're up for anything.
That's cool. Okay. Well, that's my vote. Well, the other also is, there was a few compilations of some of the Sunday strips. I'd like to see more of those if you can have any sort of vote, that appear in the newspapers.
I was just looking through those the other day, actually, and and then they also had these collections of the Bob Montana daily strips too, which are really nice.
Yeah.
I wish I'd do more of those myself.
Did you? Speaking of that, did you ever work on the Sunday strip, or is that just totally independent of what?
No, I never worked on the strips. I just did. I did one a 9/11 one once. It was it was a Kevin and Keller themed one. It was, but at that point the strip was mostly reprints.
Yeah.
Around 7-8 years ago, they just went into just recycling.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. I don't think they do it anymore, right? Yes,
I think it does run in a few papers, but it's just reprints.
Okay.
There was that point when all newspapers started to fold, and it wasn't even financially feasible to be doing a strip anymore. So they just went with reprints.
Right. Of course, they had a pretty good run, so it's not too bad, I suppose.
He had Archie was in the papers up until 7-8 years ago. With new material. All the way from I think the strip was ongoing since the mid-50s.
Yeah. But it seems like now the big cash cow is the TV shows, right? So those are doing well, right?
Yeah, that's definitely where the money is,
I think I asked this, but any chance of a movie, a motion picture? Maybe more in the traditional Archie vein instead of so mysterious and whatever.
I don't know. I know that there was talk of a movie before Riverdale.
Yeah.
But then I think with Riverdale now, there's so much focus on Riverdale that it would probably have to wait.
Yeah.
I'm assuming until after the show was kind of over.
Yeah.
You know?
Although it'd be kind of interesting to have a humorous movie at the same time as
I think so.
Not so humorous TV series, but
I think in setting it like back in the 50s or 60s would be fun.
Right. And you could even do it kind of quasi parody like the Brady Bunch movie or something.
Yeah, that would be great.
Anyway, those are my suggestions. Couple other projects you worked on over the years. You worked on a Barbie title, correct?
I did.
Was that for Marvel?
It was for Marvel.
Okay.
Yep.
And
that was a nightmare.
Oh, how so?
I mean, it wasn't a nightmare. It was just I just didn't enjoy it because there's not really much you can do with Barbie. She just kind of exists and wears clothes. It made me really realize how much I appreciated Archie because you could do so much with the characters.
Right.
Whereas Barbie, and I think they've lightened up with Barbie since they've let Barbie be in Toy Story.
Right.
I think that they've made her more self-deprecating and a little more fun.
Yeah.
But you can kind of poke fun at her and Ken now, where at the time where I drew her, it was there was no humor at all.
Well, also, didn't you have to kind of draw like a supermodel back then? Because now they have, various dolls of various races and body types and body sizes and things like that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
So you couldn't.
You had to draw a very specific way, and plus it was always you had to always match the style guide with Mattel, and Mattel was very picky, and I was glad to do the work because it was a good paying job and everything, but probably not my most fun.
Now, was there any conflict with that? Because you said earlier, stay away from doing any sort of teen type stuff, but not consider that.
They were okay with that.
Okay.
I'm not sure why. They didn't seem to have a problem with working on Barbie.
Is it mainly because there was a toy in their mind or something like that?
I guess they didn't see it as serious competition. I guess even though the Barbie series did have kind of a good run at Marvel for a few years, it was going for a few years. And Amanda Connor was working on it too at the time. Mm-hmm. She did a nice job.
Mm-hmm. And then another project, Die Kitty Die.
Yes. Actually, it's funny because we're actually launching our Kickstarter next week for the next series. Mm-hmm. So, Die Kitty Die was just something we started on Kickstarter 4 years ago and did very well. We were quite surprised and happy it took off the way it did, and we've done 3 series, and this will be the 4th series that we're doing coming up. Mm-hmm. And, it's just... it's fun because we just, pay homage to a lot of comics we like, including Harvey Comics. If you see it, you'll see a lot of little Harvey-ish things in there.
Right.
And it's just super fun. It's just kind of crazy. It's crazy, a little crazier than what we can get away with, for Archie and stuff, because it's just there's a certain wackiness to it that it's just comes out of our heads that we it's surreal basically. It's kind of like a surreal storyline,
right?
But and we're really happy with it, and so we're just getting ready to get that Kickstarter ready, which is a pain in the ass, but that's how we do that. That's how we publish that series. It's through Kickstarter. So.
I was curious if it was always done that way, because I've seen a few of them, but maybe I saw the resulting product or saw it at your table or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah,
because I do have one.
It's been published through Chapter House up in Canada. Because after we had the successful Kickstarter, we had a couple publishers interested. Mm-hmm. And we had met with Chapter House to do a lot of Canadian conventions, and they were really into it. So they actually published our because we were only doing a trade, we weren't going to do anything else. And the regular issues are just digital. But they Chapter House put out the issues in stores, so they got us into comic shops. So they helped us do that. So Kitty has been, been in comic shops thanks to Chapter House. But as far as like our initial funding goes, we do it through Kickstarter because we can sort of have raise enough money to produce it, and we have creative control. We don't have to like go through any other channels, which is really nice.
Yeah, cool. All right. Let's see. And then, of course, one time when I met with you, I think it was in San Diego, you were discussing, and you said earlier today that your first love was Harvey Comics, and you finally got an opportunity to do a Harvey comic, and then it went away. What happened there? There was Harvey Hits for Joe Books.
Harvey Hits for Joe Books. What an adventure that was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was fun. I was excited because I was finally able to, work on something Harvey. Harvey I always missed the boat with Harvey because when I started working in comics, Harvey was defunct because of the whole, Harvey brothers, the whole family, the whole thing that you know more than anybody, the whole thing that ceased publication. Then they came back in the late '80s, but I was, at Archie, but they never were like the Harvey comics we grew up with.
Yeah. Well, when they came back, there was a lot of licensed stuff and a lot of reprints. So, basically, the only person that had a job there was Jorge Pacheco. So,
right, yeah. And then, they did then they had in the early '90s, they did those New Kids on the Block thing. So, But I never really had a chance. And then they went in and out of publications in the next few years. But so when this thing came up, I was like, this is a chance to they're going to reboot Harvey, but Joe Books unfortunately was kind of on the way out when this all happened, and they did Harvey Hits. I did the Richie Rich story, and it was the stories were all done in different styles. So some people didn't like the fact that they were in all these crazy styles, but I didn't care as long as they were putting them out. And my Richie Rich was closer to the original stuff. It was a little different, but mine was probably the most traditional of the stories in there. And they were fun, and they put out one issue, which didn't sell badly. Then they were not sure what they were going to do, so they decided they were just going to put everything into a trade because we had all done 3 or 4 issues worth of material. Right. So to put it into a trade would have been nice, and they solicited it through Diamond, and I did the cover for it. And at that point, Joe Books is on life support, and they just eventually went out of business. Oh, okay. Because I thought they just dropped the Harvey license and kept Disney, so they're completely gone. Oh, okay. Well, they're gone. Oh, yeah, they went bankrupt. Yeah, they lost Disney. When they lost the Disney license to I guess IDW, I think it was, and or Dark Horse. Dark Horse was doing Frozen and stuff. And I think that when that happened, that was it for them. That's too bad. Okay. And then American Mythology does the other Harvey stuff, which is still mostly reprint. They do a little bit of new stuff. Yeah. But nobody treats Harvey with the respect they deserve. And I always say, when we did Die Kitty Die, we self-publish it, and I always was like to try and see if I could get the license for it, and just do do it the classic way. Yeah. And just even if it was one or 2 issues a year, like a Richie Rich or a Casper book, just to do it the way it's meant to be. Right. But it's a hard sell because kids nowadays don't know what the hell Harvey Comics is. Right. And but Harvey Comics definitely has a real fond fan following, even more so now than ever. Yeah. I see it now, when I go to comic shops and I go to conventions, and there's definitely an appreciation now for that style. Thanks to me. No, I don't know. Oh no, definitely. I mean, you're definitely I always thought I was the biggest Harvey fan, but I have to give that title to you. Thanks. But I still, it's really, I still am inspired by all the Harvey stuff. I mean, I have a room in my house that's just Harvey stuff. That's right. Crazy. I've seen that. And it's, it just is very impactful to my wanting to get into comics. Right. And I just, I'm still, I just like the characters because, there's some weird, quirky characters I just wouldn't they wouldn't make it nowadays. Right. Little Dot is basically clinically insane, and I don't think that would go well now. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've seen that show. Well, it's had 2 titles now. It's on Netflix. It's a cartoon show. It's called Harvey Street Kids, and now it's called
yeah, I've seen it,
Harvey
yeah.
Girls Forever. I mean, they kind of they made her black and kind of blanded her down to nothing. I mean, the only reason you know she's Dot is she has dots on her dress. But you know, it's like
and that's the thing. It's like, and I've watched the show. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's not like horrible. It's cute. It just isn't. It isn't like the Harvey comics you grew up with. You know, I like the fact that Little Dot was obsessed with dots. Mm-hmm. And then like in Little Lotta was just always like really strong and ate a lot.
Yeah.
And I know you got to be careful now. You know, with kids and obesity, you don't want to like make a joke out of it. But that was the funny part, was that he did make jokes about it. Like, you know, Little Lotta was like this really like obese little girl, but it didn't like seem to, you know, didn't seem to bother her. Like she just was she was a very powerful character. She was just slowly strong and did what she wanted. And her and Little Dot were like a good combination because they were just, you know, very very much outcasts as I saw them. But they were fun. I love Little Dot's aunts and uncles so much.
Right.
Because it was crazy. She had all these aunts and uncles. It made no sense. Like if you think about it, her grandparents would have had to have had like 100 kids. But it was just nuts. But you know, that's why I like it.
Yeah. It was very convenient to do. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like, oh, we need an uncle that's a painter. Well, it's Uncle Painter here, you know, whatever. You know? Yeah,
I mean, you can do anything. My favorite was this. I just remember. I used to like laugh. It was her Auntie Elastic, who was like she could erase things with her head.
Yes.
I was like, somebody had to be tripping on some kind of drugs when they created this character. And then the Little Dot felt bad for her because like she was kind of fat and dumpy. Mm-hmm. And then she said, like, well, she was like a fashion model. And Little Dot was like, how is she a fashion model? And then she just stretched herself out to be really tall and thin because she was made of rubber. And it was ridiculous because then she'd be like 20 feet tall. Mm-hmm. but you know, nothing made sense. It was just so out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, I've had various conversations with many of the people who work there, and it's like, yeah, they I think even more than Archie, I think they got away with a lot more. They really weren't closely watching what was going on, and there's some crazy stuff that they did over the years. So
you could tell. You could tell.
Like, I don't know if they would have had, you know, I don't think Archie's ever met, well, maybe, didn't he meet Obama? I was trying to think, has he ever met a president? But, you know, they had a Baby Huey story where he's meeting JFK and stuff like that, you know.
Well, I remember when they had Jackie Jokers and Nixon.
Right. And then there's another Richie Rich story where they had these villains, and one of them looked like Nixon. He wasn't called Nixon, but, you know, they drew him like that.
You definitely knew their political leanings.
Exactly. And this is even before Watergate. They just said, we don't like this guy, basically. Wow. You know, but you know, it's kind of funny. It was kind of hands off, you know. And sometimes they got away with things like you couldn't do. But I think all the comic companies, like you know, they had Little Dot shooting rifle on the cover, you know, things like that. You can't have that. You know?
There were so many dangerous things like her and Little Dot were doing on these covers. Like, oh God. Have you seen the Ronald Rump comic?
No, I don't. I think I've heard of it, but yeah, tell me about it.
It's done like in the Harvey style by this guy. I forget his name, but he's really good. He's going to be releasing it. He's going to be doing a Kickstarter for it too. Oh, okay. But it's just like Donald Trump as Richie Rich.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it's drawn beautifully in the old Harvey style, like perfectly.
Cool. All right.
And the character is just like, you know, like Richie Rich, but if Richie Rich was like a really like, you know, spoiled like turd like Donald Trump. So it's really funny. It's really, really funny.
Because I know back when Bush Jr. was president, it's the guy, and now his name escapes me. The guy who does Spy vs. Spy nowadays. I should know his name, but anyway, he did Richie Bush, and you know, it was back when you know Bush Jr. was president and everything, and all the terrible things he did at the time. You know.
Yeah. Is that Peter Cooper?
Peter Cooper, thank you very much. Yeah, he actually did work at Harvey at one point, you know, very early on. You know,
oh, okay.
So anyway, it's kind of funny, you know, they always use these cartoons and kind of, take Harvey in kind of strange directions. Like, I don't know if you ever saw Playful Obsession by Dan Close.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I loved it. Little Octagon.
And, it's like, and of course, the infamous Casper the Dead Baby that was in Crazy Magazine, things like that,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
some people are offended by that type of stuff, but I always thought it was great, So,
Yeah, I love it. No, I love it too. I love it too.
But,
I remember back when Harvey, there was like the Harvey copies too, like Timmy the Timid Ghost.
right.
Those things.
And, I used to buy stuff like that as well, because it's like anything that came out that is even remotely like it. And, of course, I'm a big Dennis the Menace fan, too, and I got all those, so.
Yeah, those Fawcett comics, I love those too.
So, do you still collect, or do you just write and draw nowadays?
I do, but I have this thing where it's like I need to like go through all my comics because I have like file like metal cabinets down in my basement that are just like long boxes of Harvey comics. And what happens is I'll pick up back bunches of comics, and I always buy doubles and triples of things. So I have to like categorize what I have because I'll have like the same issue of Little Dots, Aunts and Uncles. I'll have like 5 copies of one issue.
Oops.
So I know. So I really have to go through what I have. I'd love to have a complete run of all these books.
Yeah.
So hopefully, well, of course, now that we're stuck in this this coronavirus situation, maybe I'll have more time to go through my comics. Right. I
and
don't know.
of course, this is an inevitable question I usually ask, but now it's kind of different. But we'll just ask. I mean, are there any convention appearances for you the next few months? I mean,
well, that'll be to be determined. I had like a few shows coming up that were like canceled. Like I had one this weekend in Toronto, which is canceled, and obviously then I was going to go to Belgium in 2 weeks.
Oh wow!
And that's going to be, we're delaying that to the end of November, or end of October.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was, I think those are just the two. The next one I have pending is at the end of April, Calgary. So we'll see what happens. Anything can happen in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so, then I have conventions, lined up through every month the rest of the year. So we'll see. Hopefully by April, May, June, things will start rolling again, I'm hoping.
Right.
We'll see.
On a normal year, do you just do conventions all the time, or is there like a season for you, or what?
Yeah, I usually do them a lot. I usually do them from basically from March to October. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll do a couple here and there in February and November, but there seems to be like that 9-month period where there's like a lot of shows. Mm-hmm. I do probably 20, 25 conventions a year.
Oh wow!
So I do a lot. I do a lot of them. Yeah. It's sort of like it's fun. I like to travel, and it also keeps. It's usually pretty decent income. Mm-hmm. So I mean, unfortunately, Archie's keeping me busy, so I do have a steady gig with them.
Yeah.
But it is, I do feel for my friends who do conventions, and that's like their sole income.
Yeah, I was going to say, has this cramped your style much, or is it just like maybe a little, or?
It has. Yeah, it's going to be a tighter, obviously. But again, I can, I'm doing more commissions at home. Yeah, I've been doing more. So there's always that, and I'm not going to starve or anything.
Yeah,
but it's tough for people who, like I said, it is some artists' main source of income or only source of income.
Yeah.
So that's tough. So hopefully, I'm just hoping that they, will get through the next few months, and things will get back to normal for them. But they're also, I know a lot of them are also on Facebook doing commissions and stuff too. So, it is what it is. This is one of those situations where there's no way to control it, so you just have to sort of make the best of it.
Right. And we're recording this now, but I probably won't put it up for another month, so you never know where it's going to be by that point. But I'm still gonna leave it up. It's like
yeah, we'll see. We'll see where things are. I know, like right now they're doing a lot of they're basically kind of closing down most restaurants everywhere and really trying to keep people from only going out for necessities and things like that. So, but one good thing being comic book artists is it's not that different from our normal lifestyle.
Right.
Like we're used to being stuck at home at a drawing table without much social outlook is not a big change for a lot of artists too. So we can adapt. I think we can adapt to it better than.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with me when I'm writing my books. I mean, if I don't write from home, I'm writing in the library or something, but it's very quiet typing, and researching and things like that. So,
Yeah.
But I do have a regular job, and they're considering having me work from home, which I don't really want to, but obviously if they say I have to, I'll do it, But
Right.
I'm waiting for the word. Right now they said, oh, you don't have to dress up. They tell us to wear nice slacks and, no T-shirts, but since we're not having visitors right now, they said, you can wear jeans and T-shirt. And I'm like, yay.
That's nice. Yeah.
But anyway, we'll take it one day at a time, and see what happens. But
yeah, that's all we can do, and it's just gotta go with the flow, and like my gym closed, so I went for a hike today, and you just gotta do, like a ton of work, and I figured now's a good time to do a Kickstarter because Kickstarters are like you're on 24/7 basically answering questions and checking in on the Kickstarter progress. So this is probably as good time as any to be doing it. So
right.
I'm gonna try and launch it next week. I'm hoping.
Okay, well, why don't you give a plug to that and any plugs that you want to give and how people can contact you?
Yeah, you can check out for the Kickstarter, Die Kitty Die. Just go to diekitty.com and there'll be a link to the Kickstarter. You can my regular stuff. You go to my website, danparent.com, and I'm also on Facebook, so you can check me out there. And Parent Daniel on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Uh-oh. Don't get sick there. Anyway.
I know.
I know, I'm the same way. It's like any cough or any cough or sneeze, and I'm like, no! I must have it.
But yeah, so you can find me. I'm easy to find online. So, then I'll just hopefully be back doing conventions again in a couple months or less. And,
all right.
And then, Archie projects have still, got a lot of cool Archie projects coming up. By the time they hear this podcast, they'll know what the new book is I'm working on.
Okay.
But I'll tell you off the air.
Okay, I will.
So it's cool.
All right, very cool. And I appreciate you being a podcast guest today, and I thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Dan Parent, for being my special guest. Episode number 72 will be coming soon. If you would like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Mark Arnold and Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help in continuing the production of my books and this podcast. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel. The opening and closing music for the Fun Ideas podcast is provided courtesy of Andrew the Slow Poisoner Goldfarb and is used with permission. This has been the Fun Ideas podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2020, Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you, and good night.
Lace to rhinestone kisses on those blind eyelids and drive with your velour chauffeur across the river Styx. Popping creation pills in the pink electric church. The final flicker of your illusion.